My name is Rachel Kennedy, and I'm a meteorologist for the National Weather Service, San Francisco Bay Area, and I am here to provide you with an update on the 2025-2026 winter seasonal outlook. How this presentation is going to go: first, we're going to talk about what the drought outlook looks like for this winter and what we expect to occur. Then we're going to move on to talking about the El Niño Southern Oscillation and what that means for our winter weather on the whole. And then finally, we're going to move through the winter seasonal outlooks issued by the Climate Prediction Center. So here is a look at the U.S. seasonal drought outlook that is valid from October 16th, 2025 to January 31st, 2026. So we can see that in the Bay Area and Central Coast, no drought is expected to develop this winter, which is a good sign for what we can expect. So what exactly can we expect? Well, to kind of get into that, first we're going to have to talk about the El Niño Southern Oscillation, also known as ENSO. In ENSO, there are three main components. The first is El Niño, normal or neutral conditions, and La Niña conditions. For further descriptions on how ENSO works and what each different category means, I will refer you back to the seasonal outlook issued on October 5th, 2025. For the purposes of this video, we're only going to focus on the La Niña conditions. The Climate Prediction Center has issued a La Niña advisory for this winter. So what does that mean exactly? Well, it means we have cooler than normal water spreading up along our coastline, while there is warmer than normal water along the equator. So specifically, what does that mean for our weather? Historically, under La Niña conditions, we can expect to see a ridge or high pressure over the Gulf of Alaska region, and then a trough or low pressure over the central United States. This tends to keep the polar jet stream oriented farther north, and often results in cooler and wetter than normal conditions across the Pacific Northwest and Northern California regions. Comparatively, this results in drier than normal and warmer than normal conditions across much of the southwestern United States. Now, you might have noticed that the Bay Area and Central Coast happens to fall in between the two most clearly delineated wetter than normal and drier than normal areas. Specifically for our region, it means we can either be wetter than normal or drier than normal. So the CPC is forecasting a weak La Niña to occur this winter. Here we have a look at 12 past weak La Niña cases across California and the desert Southwest. So starting first with precipitation on the left side of the screen, we can see that in 8 out of 12 of these cases, the majority of California and the Bay Area and Central Coast has been drier than normal. Comparatively, in 4 of those cases, notably 1995 to 1996 and 2022 to 2023, we can see that a lot of California, including the Bay Area and Central Coast, was actually wetter than normal, really highlighting that in a weak La Niña regime, while we typically are drier than normal, we do have the potential to be wetter than normal. Similarly, with temperature on the right, we can see a more even distribution between cooler than normal temperatures and warmer than normal temperatures across much of the state of California, really indicating that under a weak La Niña regime, we can be either cooler or warmer than normal. So just to kind of summarize what this means overall for weak La Niña conditions, historically, weak La Niñas do favor near normal or dry winter months. However, past conditions do not always guarantee a future outcome. We can see that for each of these 4 regions, Northern California, Sierra Nevada, Central California, Southern California, that while overwhelmingly we see drier than normal winter months, there are still cases for each region where we saw near normal precipitation and wetter than normal precipitation. We just want to highlight that although we typically lean drier than normal in a La Niña year, residents should remain aware of the weather, and they should be aware that although we historically are dry during La Niña, there are years where we can see above normal precipitation under La Niña conditions. So specifically, what are we expecting this winter? Well, to start off, we're going to look at the monthly temperature and precipitation outlooks for November 2025. So in terms of our monthly temperature outlook, the Climate Prediction Center has much of the Bay Area and Central Coast leaning above normal temperature-wise, and about equal chances of above or below normal precipitation. So this is a trend that we're going to see continue through much of the winter as we head into the 3-month seasonal temperature and precipitation outlook timeframes. Here we start off with the November, December, January timeframe. So in terms of our seasonal temperature outlook, we can see that we are leaning above normal temperature-wise. As we look at our seasonal precipitation outlook, we can see that the North Bay, in addition to Northern California and the Pacific Northwest, is leaning above normal for precipitation, while there are equal chances for above or below normal precipitation across the rest of the Bay Area, Central Coast, and portions of Southern California. This is a fairly typical La Nina spread where we see that warmer than normal conditions across the desert Southwest, and we see wetter than normal conditions across the PNW and Northern California, and drier than normal conditions across the desert Southwest. As we move into the December, January, February timeframe, we can see some fairly similar forecasts. So in terms of temperature, the CPC continues to have the Bay Area and Central Coast leaning above normal temperature-wise. In terms of our precipitation outlook, there are a few changes. So we have equal chances of seeing above or below normal precipitation across the Bay Area and Central Coast. As we move into the January, February, March timeframe, we can see we have equal chances of seeing above or below normal temperatures, and the CPC has slightly below normal precipitation forecast. As we head into the February, March, April timeframe, we can see the CPC has forecasted slightly above normal temperatures and slightly below normal precipitation across the region. As we head into the March, April, May timeframe, we can see fairly similar trends. We continue to be above normal for our temperature forecast. We continue to be below normal to equal chances of precipitation. So just to summarize, in a weak La Nina regime, we typically experience drier than normal winters. However, that does not mean we will necessarily have a drier than normal winter. There are still historical cases where we have seen wetter than normal winters to near normal winters across our area, even under those weak La Nina regimes. With that in mind, the current Climate Prediction Center forecast does have much of our area leaning below normal in precipitation for this winter. However, that is not a reason to stay complacent this winter. Residents are advised to stay up to date on the forecast as we move into the winter season. All it takes is one significant storm for flooding and other impacts to occur. As always, we advise residents to stay up to date on the forecast and to take precautions as we move into the winter months in order to be prepared for any storms that may develop this winter. So that was our 2025-2026 winter seasonal outlook update. We hope you enjoyed, and you can visit our website at weather.gov/mtr in order to find out more information on your local forecast.